Ladies and gentlemen, good morning / afternoon / evening, wherever you're hearing this from, back to a new episode of the Pitch Side podcast. First of all, like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the channel, most importantly, to help support and produce more episodes of the podcast that is going to be coming to you daily, as I mentioned yesterday, before we fix a proper schedule for it. It is Saturday, so it is domestic football time. We touched upon this yesterday, in yesterday's episode, how Real Madrid are doing really bad this season, and they have been struggling to get some results and getting some good performances out of their club, particularly, some players became synonymous for bad performances. Let's say the likes, for example, of Rafael Varane, who have been putting on some really bad displays as of late this season. So I decided to get more in depth with this discussion today, of course. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about the game against Sevilla, depending on what happens in that game as well. So Real Madrid's decline, looking at it, it didn't start this season. Really, I mean, is anyone honestly thinking that Real Madrid just declined this season because of the pandemic and because of the lack of crowds and because of the finances and all of that? It is not. It is that decline started from 2018 pretty much, since they won the last Champions League. Even in that season, where they won their last Champions League, number 13 pretty much, which shows you how unlucky that number can be. They really declined in performance even before that. You can even argue that in 2017, before that, they were bad and they lucked their way into winning a Champions League in 2017, and they almost did the same in 2018 by different standards. I mean, depending if you accept that opinion or not. But since Cristiano Ronaldo left, I mean, don't want to link it as a chain reaction kind of thing that, okay, Cristiano Ronaldo left, so Real Madrid became bad. It was before that. It was before that the fact that ZIDANE didn't see the future. Real Madrid didn't see the future. They spent basically 3 to 4 seasons with the same personnel, pretty much. Not trying to improve, not trying to get new signings, and especially in that midfield. The worst thing about Real Madrid now is their midfield. Their basic starting lineup midfield, that is, the Kroos, Casemiro, Modric trio. I'm not mentioning Valverde here because he's really good, and I think he's a point of light. Unfortunately for them, he's injured these days, so he can't play, but he's a point of light really in a dark place for Real Madrid at the moment. The defensive aspects of things have fallen apart really. Marcelo has been so bad that it's unexpected that he will stay at Real Madrid, in fact, for the rest of the season or anything. The amount of inefficiency that became obvious in Real Madrid's attack sometimes. And yes, Karim Benzema has stepped up. He has stepped up last season. He has basically been the one to take them to the title win last season. But there is a lot of inefficiency. There is a lot of missed chances. There is a lot of lack of creativity sometimes when you play with that 3. And we've seen it this season now. This season is basically the conclusion of the last couple of seasons. Since Cristiano Ronaldo left, Real Madrid and the board were not ready for that post-Ronaldo era. And they kept going with the same personnel pretty much. I mean, this is not a pandemic-related situation. This has been 3 seasons in the making. This is the natural conclusion for what is happening for Real Madrid. If you think this shouldn't happen, or this is not natural or normal, I think you're wrong. I don't know. I'm not trying to force an opinion really, but I believe that anybody thinking Real Madrid being this bad this season isn't natural or isn't a normal result for a combination of stagnation from the board and bad performances from aging players. We bash Barcelona for having aging players. Barcelona have been the butt of jokes for the last 2 seasons for having aging players who can't perform at the top level. How about Real Madrid's aging players who can't perform at the top level? Talk about Kroos and talk about Modric, talk about Marcelo. I mean, in my opinion, it's sometimes, and I know this might be a weird opinion, sometimes you can add Ramos into that discussion as well. He sometimes disappears. This season, we blame him on Varane because he plays bad when he's alone, and he's without Ramos behind him and alongside him to support. I think even with Ramos, they have been bad at certain points. Case in point, I think the game against Inter and the Alfredo Di Stefano game, Ramos was there, right? But he wasn't getting along with Varane. He wasn't they weren't understanding themselves very well because the whole defensive organization has changed now. Sergio Ramos is all about getting forward more than being in the back at this kind of age. And at this point of his career, you can't afford being complacent. You can't afford being, egotistical. Just to go forward and just to attack and venture forward and forget your basic job, which is to defend. So, Real Madrid's decline at the moment is the conclusion of, and the accumulation actually, of a lot of rotten decision making by the board and by the managers. And they have been linked with so many players over the last couple of years. Since Ronaldo left, they have been linked with Mbappe, they have been linked with Mane, they have been linked with Mo Salah, they have been linked with Neymar even at one point, believe it or not, according to some reports. Yet they never had any player of proper measure, proper status to replace Ronaldo, because that's what they're looking for, to replace Cristiano Ronaldo. And in my opinion, this is a wrong thing, because if the problem was in Ronaldo on his own, any other player literally would have done the job. And not done the job in terms that he will be as effective as Ronaldo, but he will be a good placeholder. I mean, Eden Hazard is a good placeholder. Vinicius Jr. is not bad, although he has some bad decision making sometimes, but it is not bad, he can do the job. However, the Real Madrid board decided to make even worse decisions by letting some huge stars go. And I mean huge stars who have the potential, the likes of Achraf Hakimi, the likes of Reguilon. Seeing how these guys are doing now at both Inter and before that Dortmund for Hakimi, and how the guy is doing for Tottenham in Sergio Reguilon, and how he's now Mourinho's teacher's pet there. It really should sadden Real Madrid fans to see those prospects go away and be successful in other teams, while they have Marcelo, and the second option is Mendy, who's not much better really. He's better defensively, but as a left back for Real Madrid, you're holding a legacy there. You're holding a legacy for Roberto Carlos. You're holding a legacy for Marcelo, good or bad. You're holding a legacy for great left-backs who came there before you, and you're going to be following on their footsteps. But apparently, the shoes are too big to fill for Mendy, and he can't do the job properly. And I don't blame him, really. Because the whole organism for Real Madrid isn't doing well. And there's, of course, the other problem of Lucas Vazquez at right-back. And that, of course, is related to the fact they let Hakimi go, which was one of the weirdest decisions, I think, ever made by Real Madrid. Although it was Zinedine Zidane who wanted him in the first place to be in the team back in 2016-17 when he was promoted to the senior side and was a part of the Champions League campaign in 2017. Crucial, not crucial, it depends on taste and opinion. So Real Madrid overall have a couple of deciding weeks for their season. Their future depends on the next 3 results, which are this one against Sevilla, maybe more or less. I don't think that will hurt as much if they lose against Sevilla, really. But the next couple of games after that are crucial. Hosting Borussia Mönchengladbach in Madrid, with Champions League hopes really on the wire. I'm not going to say almost out, because that is really far-fetched. Real Madrid can turn the table anytime on a dime, win Borussia Mönchengladbach, and just qualify normally to the round of 16. And by the way, that will not erase the bad performances in the group stages. It will never do, because aside from the Inter game in Italy, which, thanks for Arturo Vidal, it was more comfortable than it should have been for Real Madrid. It should have been harder than that, but with 10 men, Inter couldn't do anything more. Aside from that game, Real Madrid couldn't look comfortable in any of the other 4 games in the group. Of course, both the Shakhtar games were just horrendous, because Shakhtar seems to have a hard-on for Real Madrid. They conceded 10 against Borussia Mönchengladbach, home and away. Then they don't score against Inter, they drew 0-0 in a game that they were bossed and dominated in Ukraine. And then they managed a double over Real Madrid. And that double could see them getting through if they get the same result that they got from Inter at home, which is the 0-0 draw. I mean, Real Madrid are literally staring at the Europa League, and I know this might be a joke for some, but literally that's what could happen. There is no other option. I mean, going out altogether in the 4th spot, like bottom of the table, would be much honourable for Real Madrid to then go 3rd and be forced to play in the Europa League. The Real Madrid fans should let that sink in for a moment. There is the possibility that Real Madrid, the team that is synonymous with the Champions League, synonymous with winning 13 titles in the Champions League, the team that on the basis of the name alone, are odds-on favourite to win the Champions League every season, despite being bad for the last 3, 4, maybe 5 seasons. I would extend that. But they are always favourites to win the Champions League, by the basis on being a great team historically, by the basis of being so synonymous with the Champions League. You can imagine how the Real Madrid fans are thinking right now. You can imagine how some other European football fans are thinking right now. It's an impossible suggestion, but in reality that could happen. This week is pretty tough and pretty deciding for Real Madrid. They had Sevilla, which again, as I mentioned, more or less, they win or lose, it's not going to really matter. It's not going to really be a big problem if they win or lose. Then you have the Mönchengladbach game, which is crucial for their Champions League hopes. I think it's the most crucial out of the 3. And then you have the Atletico Madrid game, which is not less important, because Atletico Madrid have been so good in La Liga this season. In the Champions League, more or less, but in La Liga they have been good. They've been consistently good. It looks like their season. It looks like the kind of season that Atletico Madrid can win a title in. Barcelona, they're ragging a couple of wins as of late, but I'm not going to say that they're back to form, or they're back to a form that could win them La Liga. They could still crumble at any moment. Atletico Madrid are the only team that have been consistent this season. And if they beat Real Madrid next Saturday or next Sunday, they will manage to forge a good path for themselves into winning La Liga. For Real Madrid, that loss is going to be compounding their misery if a bad result happens against Mönchengladbach. There's a lot different considerations that Real Madrid should be thinking of. There's a whole lot of ideas, different plans that Zidane should have been put in now in front of him. This is the day of the game. And hopefully some Real Madrid fans hear me out and try to explain to yourselves how Real Madrid have been this bad. The only explanation, the only answer, the only result is bored, not doing the right moves at the right time, couple that with the bad performances from players, and, a whole host of problems coming in with Zinedine Zidane, who, his status as a manager looked almost untouchable in his first run with the club. In fact, I would say he shouldn't have returned to Real Madrid. That's what I would say. He shouldn't have returned to Real Madrid. He shouldn't have returned to the club after he left on top. He left with 3 Champions Leagues in a row. He left an untouchable legacy in the Champions League the first time he left Real Madrid. Now, if Real Madrid do not do good in the Champions League this season, or they go out of the group stage altogether, which is very, very likely, by the way. Do not give me that shtick of, oh, Real Madrid are going to do something definitely. No, this is not guaranteed. This is not guaranteed. And if you watched the game against between Borussia Mönchengladbach and Inter last week in the Champions League, and you said, oh, we can score against these guys, who guaranteed you that? You didn't do that in 90 minutes almost in Germany. You barely, scored in the 92, 94th minute of the game. You saved yourself very, very late in Germany. What is going to guarantee to you that you will do that early in Spain? And Borussia Mönchengladbach are the more comfortable team heading into this because they only need a draw. A draw will make them qualify, whatever going to be the result in the other game. Whatever going to be the result of Shakhtar, whatever going to be the result of Inter, they will never care. A draw will be enough. So they will be really happy to sit deep, to sit tight, and just watch Real Madrid try and hurry and panic themselves into trying and scoring. That is the issue. For Real Madrid, this is a week that will really be life or death. If Real Madrid do not win against Sevilla, probably people will not care mostly. I don't think that Real Madrid fans will really care if they lose against Sevilla. I know it might hurt, and it will be another bad result this season, another bad performance potentially this season, but they won't care because they put all their eggs in the basket of just beating Mönchengladbach in the Champions League. And again, a draw will do them good only if Inter win, because if Inter win, they will have the advantage over them in the head-to-head competition. Aside from that, any other result in Milan between Shakhtar and Inter will not help Real Madrid qualify if they don't get the job done in Gladbach and against Gladbach. Sorry, not in Gladbach, against Gladbach. So I can't really get into the heads. I can't imagine the players now. I can't imagine the coaching staff thinking about this upcoming weekend and just being normal and being not nervous. It's impossible. It is nervy. It is nervy for Zidane, as much as he didn't want to show it against Shakhtar in midweek, as much as he doesn't want to show it in the media, as much as, the players do not want to show it in the media, as much as you probably don't see it in some players' statements. The nerves are there. And are there in a big way. Like, really, it's a really bad time to be a Real Madrid fan at the moment, because this is the most nervous time of the season. If they get through this kind of week and the next couple of fixtures, I think they will be fine, and they will turn quite the corner around this season, and maybe they will have, a better fortune, and this will just be the wake-up call. It will be a hard one, but it will be a wake-up call eventually for them to grab the things by the scruff of the neck and get their season on the right track, to win trophies, to get a Champions League, to get the best they could of the Champions League. I'm not saying they're going to win it, because, goodness me, that is far-fetched to say that Real Madrid will win the Champions League. They're not anywhere close to winning the Champions League. If they get out of the group stage, we will talk about that. We might talk about how favourites they are to win the Champions League, how much of a favourites they are to win the Champions League, but now, they're far from it. This week for Real Madrid, again, and I want to stress this enough because some people do not understand the reality and the gravity of the situation with Real Madrid. The Europa League isn't a joke now. This could be a potential fate for Real Madrid. This could be, the eventuality of Real Madrid's future this season. Playing Thursday night football, which is not going to be pleasant for them. It will be pleasant for the Europa League, for the UEFA, because interest in the Europa League is going to just skyrocket high because of Real Madrid in it, and maybe there could be another couple of big guns in that as well. Certainly one of United, Leipzig and PSG will be there. So it will be good for UEFA, it will be good for us as viewers, to be fair, because nobody cares about the Europa League. That probably will give me more incentive to talk about it on this podcast. But certainly for Real Madrid fans, Europa League isn't an option. I mean, if you ask a Real Madrid fan, and I'm sure of that, and I will make even a poll on it on Twitter, by the way. Follow me, the plug, time for social media plug. Follow me, the link's in the description, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram, and Side PSP on Twitter. I'm going to make a poll on Twitter, and I'm going to ask, if you are a Real Madrid fan, which one do you prefer? Going out altogether in 4th place, or going out and playing Europa League in the 3rd place? And I'm almost gonna bet on it that nobody's gonna choose going in the Europa League. Everybody's gonna choose, let's go out all together and we'll be back in the Champions League next season. But going through the Europa League, and boy, the Europa League this season isn't like lightweight as well. There's some really decent side, a very decent AC Milan side, very good AC Milan side, a very good Napoli side. Their competitors in La Liga, Real Sociedad, have been so good. Bayer Leverkusen, who are doing really well. There's Leicester City, there's Roma, there's a host of decent sides. It's not just a lightweight competition. There's a whole host of decent sides in that competition who could give lots of troubles for Real Madrid as well, if they go there. And I know I talk a lot like it already happened and Real Madrid are just, hopeless at this point. They're not. But Real Madrid fans need to wrap their head around the fact that this is a real possibility. This is a real possibility that they could be ending up in the Europa League. As much as they won't like it, as much as they won't be pleased by it, but they will end up there. If they don't get the job against Borussia Mönchengladbach. And it's a big if. And it's also a big ask for them to be composed and not to be nervous when you're thinking that there's another result that you depend on, really. They depend on their result, yes, but they depend more on the result of Shakhtar versus Inter. They will pray to God that Shakhtar doesn't do anything of notice against Inter Milan at the Champions League. Because that is going to just dash their hopes into million pieces. And just make them sound hopeless. So, in the end, I just want to stress my point here for the last time, and both these games are going to be played simultaneously. So like it will be the kind of game where the bodies are in Madrid and the minds are in Milan, and hoping that Inter do some, and hoping that Inter win actually. So that might ease the tension off of them. But how do they know? Anyway, finally I want to say that I'm not a Real Madrid hater. I know I sounded very negative, but I'm not a Real Madrid hater. So I want to say that, again, it's not a joke. Europa League is actual possibility for Real Madrid, but they still can do it. They still can relieve themselves of the pressure if they do a good job. If they have the spirit of the champions that we've been talking about for Real Madrid for the past couple of years, the same spirit that kept them in the Champions League when they weren't good in 2017 and 18, and let's admit that, by the way, that they weren't good in 2017 and 18 in the Champions League. So, eventually, it boils down to whether Real Madrid can be composed at the hardest time. This is the hardest time for them to be composed at. If they manage to be composed this week, in the next 3 fixtures, and they manage some good results, and most importantly, manage to get the job done against Borussia Mönchengladbach, fine. They will turn their seasons around, probably, and they will have a better finish, but still far from winning the Champions League. However, if they don't win against Sevilla, that's not going to be bad for them in La Liga. That will give bad signs ahead of the game against Mönchengladbach. That's going to give more nerves for Real Madrid fans and give more tension for Zidane and for the players ahead of another big game, and then another big game against Atletico Madrid afterwards. So, Real Madrid should be composed, focused, and ready mentally more than anything to get over this week and to get the good results that they need in order to keep their season alive. And I heard that Florentino Perez is not going to sack Zidane. Don't give me that BS. Zidane is going to be sacked if they don't make it past the group stage in any form. He's going to be sacked. Like Imagine Zinedine Zidane, one of the players that are synonymous as well with the Champions League because his goal is one of the most historic ones in its history in 2002 final. We'll be playing Europa League football. We're playing on Thursday. That is not going to be the case. So, in the end, it will boil down to how composed and focused Real Madrid could be to get the good results. That's it for this episode. In the end, I'll remind you to like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this, subscribe to the channel mostly, and enable notifications to get more of this podcast. Follow us on the social media, links will be in the description, of course. Again, at PitchSidePod on Instagram, at SidePSP on Twitter. You can listen to us on Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get the podcast from. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP, and until tomorrow, where we're going to be looking back certainly at the game between Real Madrid and Sevilla, I will see you soon. Goodbye, guys.